Hi, welcome to Anaprime Recap. You were reincarnated into a new world and discover you are a rank F adventurous summoner. Now you need to recruit monsters and warriors for your guild and unlock extraordinary new abilities. We are in the anime, Black Summoner, episodes 1, 2 and 3. Kelvin is a young man who has just gone through the reincarnation process. Through the goddess of reincarnation he was sent to another world. However, he paid the price of having his memories completely erased in order to gain some extra abilities. When he finally awakens for the first time, the young man finds himself inside a forest with some animals, at which point a welcome panel suddenly appears in front of him, saying that he had just been reincarnated and that he wished to lose his memories. Upon hearing this, Kelvin is displeased and bitterly regrets his decision. The device continues to explain to him that that world is full of swordsmen of the most diverse types and magicians with a high variety of spells. The panel then shows the status of the new reincarnate, and when looking at his abilities he realizes that in that world his class is that of a summoner, and with this he gets more experience in the battlefield, as well as powers that help him as a support. The menu asks him to go to the nearest town to start his new journey. While he is walking along the road, Kelvin asks the goddess if she will accompany him for the whole journey, and the entity says yes. After all, she was his servant and he was her invoker. When he sees her status he realizes that almost all the information was unknown. He only knew that her name was Melfina, the goddess of reincarnation. When they arrive in the city of Parth, the young man understands more about the decision he made in the past, being told by the talking menu that he fell in love with her when he saw her and that when he reincarnated and had her as his servant, he would fall in love again because she was a very beautiful goddess. Upon hearing all this, Kelvin questions himself about his old decisions, criticizing himself, but then he asks Melfina if he could summon her. After all, his class was exactly for this, but she tells him that this is not possible yet because the amount of magic he has at that moment is very low. Walking through the city, the young man is informed by his maidservant that they are approaching the Adventurers Guild, the place where he should register to officially begin his adventure. When they present themselves at the reception, Kelvin asks for his registration. The young man receives a sheet with a questionnaire to complete all his documentation, and as he had the ability to read and literacy he was able to fill it out by himself. However, his servant quickly warns him about filling out his information, telling him that since he is a summoner, he could start being watched by the government. After all, this is an extremely rare breed and there is only one in each nation. Hearing this, Kelvin fills in the log that his class is Green Mage, so as not to arouse any suspicion. He then receives his adventurer card and as usual starts at rank F. The receptionist tells him that after completing 10 consecutive missions, he will be able to raise his adventurer level and that he cannot earn extra points for taking jobs above his status. She finishes by saying that when the adventurer reaches rank C, he will have to pass some tests to continue progressing. He now understands how the whole system works and quickly asks if there are any quests for his level. The receptionist shows you some more basic ones, such as collecting herbs, rescuing a lost cat, or defeating 3 slimes. On the advice of his servant, he accepts the job of hunting the slimes. After all, he could make a pact with one of them and thus summon it to help him in combat. After accepting his first mission, he buys a small wooden staff and sets off in search of the monsters. When he arrives at a green field, he identifies the presence of blue slimes in the place, quickly hides and then uses his rank S skill, Evaluating Eye, allowing him to see all the monster's status information. Kelvin plans to make the pact, but Melfina explains that he first needs the little creature's consent, and to do this he would need to weaken it, being very careful not to eliminate it, more or less like capturing a Pokemon. The adventurer hearing this prepares to attack him with his staff without using magic, trying not to defeat him. He then jumps out of the bushes and strikes a blow in the slime's direction, but the creature quickly deflects, counterattacking him with a strong strike. At one point he makes a surprise move on the monster and manages to reduce the slime's HP, leaving it with only 3 of its 5 life points. Happy to have hit him, he extends his hand towards the monster to make the pact, and with this action he ends up spending half of his magic points, but manages to carry out his plan successfully. Kelvin names his slime Clotho and to test its invocation, conjures it to help him defeat the other creatures. The adventurer believes that his new companion can become even stronger because by defeating others of his kind he could absorb them and thus become bigger. The young man tells him that they need to capture their core to take back as confirmation of their mission. The two hide behind some bushes waiting for the right moment to start their attack. Kelvin knows that he only has enough power to cast one more spell and that his summoning could help him fight the others. The two jump from the place they were hiding. The young man conjures a wind magic and with this he manages to defeat a slime very quickly. Clotho fights with another of his kind and with only one blow he manages to defeat it. The young man seeing the situation realizes that his companion was stronger than before the pact. Melfina explains to him that the summoned creature holds part of the summoner's rank, and as Kelvin was the only S-rank summoner, his creature had an increase of 100 points in all its status even though it was level 1. They finish the mission and get paid for their work. Kelvin heads for an inn, in order to rest and spend the night there, but as he enters an alley he notices that some clandestine traders are selling elves in cages. He observes one of them, but goes on his way without caring. The young man arrives at the Spirit Song Inn, where he is welcomed by Claire, the owner of the establishment. She asks him to rest while she prepares the food. In his room Kelvin asks Melfina if there is no place to bathe, but she replies that only the richest people or those who live in castles have access to bathing. The commoners wash in rivers or clean themselves with hot towels. The invoker says that someday he will be very rich and be able to take a bath, and the goddess of reincarnation asks him to get strong as soon as possible so that he can invoke her, so that he can enjoy the adventure at her side. And so begins the journey of Kelvin the summoner, Clotho the blue slime, and Melfina, the goddess of reincarnation. After starting the adventure with his companions, the young man faced some low-level dangers, but still gained a lot of experience. After all, he had an ability to double his battle points. In a short time he has reached rank E. In the Adventurers Guild the young man already raises envious glances from the other members. The summoner is congratulated by the receptionist who asks him about his past, but the protagonist prefers not to say anything. As he requests more missions, a fellow appears at the back of the establishment and questions the young man if he does not wish to face the Ghost Black Knight. The man's name is Cashel, an adventurer who has just returned from a mission. The people in the place know that this young man is a B-level, and just likes to show off to the newcomers in the place, in order to gain more admiration. Cashel makes a proposal to Kelvin and calls him to his group so they can all defeat the Black Knight, but the receptionist warns him that the young adventurer was not that experienced to defeat this enemy, because he had just reached rank E, and the enemy creature was much stronger than it appeared to be. He insists on the invitation, but the summoner rejects it, saying that he was still too weak and would only hinder the more experienced in combat, at which point the protagonist uses his eye skill and identifies the status of the other adventurer and realizes that he is at level 34, being of the assassin class. Observing this, the young man makes a new proposal and starts a dispute against Cashel, saying that the winner would be the one who defeats the Ghost Rider first. His adversary accepts the challenge and leaves the place. The protagonist in his thinking creates the strategy of purposely falling into the trap that his opponent is probably creating. The young man will certainly follow him, and when he is in the middle of the fight against the Ghost Rider, will try to harm him. In an alley not so far away, Cashel talks to the members of his group, and one of them has the skill, Analyze Eye, at rank C, and even with this he could not see the young man's status due to his high level of concealment power, generating a great curiosity about his real strength. But Raj, an ally of the assassin, says he doesn't care about this, he just wants to finish off the adventurer as he has done with several others. At the end of that day, as they enter the ancient castle of the Spirit of Evil, the group of profiteers follow after Kelvin. The summoner comes out from behind one of the pillars, saying that behind the huge door at the end of the room, there was the Black Knight, and the bet was to see who could defeat him first. The adventurer tells them that they being there will probably get in his way, but at the same time says he already knows his evil plan, challenging the trio to a battle. Raj rushes off in their direction, but is surprised by a rank D magic, Mudvine, capable of leaving him motionless with the creation of a muddy swamp at his feet. Cashel realizes that the young man still managed to hide the spell so that none of them would notice. Kelvin throws magical blades of wind in the direction of the group, and the gang spy ends up fleeing back to the corridor, but has a big surprise on the way. Clotho is conjured, but now he is no longer a simple slime. A few days ago, while dueling alongside his summoner, he ended up evolving into a glutton slime, now bearing the title, the Devourer. The creature brings the gang member back to the hall and hits him with a blow so hard that it knocks him unconscious. Raj manages to free himself from the magic, but is quickly grabbed by the monster's tentacles. Cashel runs towards the protagonist, but is defeated in the blink of an eye. In this way, all are defeated and serve as a warm-up for the young man, who at this point heads to face the Black Knight. As he enters the combat room, he uses the ocular ability, thus identifying the opponent's status, being a level 53 swordsman warrior, carrying a gigantic attack and defense. The young man says that he would like him to join his group through a pact, but upon hearing this, the Ghost Rider just starts laughing. After all, this was the first human who tried to talk to him after a long time, saying that usually when someone saw him, would run towards him with a weapon. Sitting on a ladder, the two talk, and the Great Warrior tells Kelvin that he too was once a human. His name is Gerard, and when he died, he came back as a monster who defended the castle because he had an immense loyalty to the kingdom that existed there. Hearing all his story, the summoner convinces him that they must fight a battle to decide which direction they will take, and if the young man wins, they make a pact and leave that ancient castle. The combat begins. Kelvin uses his wind shots, but his attack is blocked. Clotho uses his tentacles, but is quickly trapped by the knight. The adventurer conjures his earth wall spell. The slime slips out of the warrior's hands and destroys the barrier with an extremely strong cut. The Ghost Rider begins a hard exchange of blows with Clotho. At that moment the young man conjures a magic that leaves him under a strong pressure. Being unable to move freely, the opponent tries to get loose, but he hears a sweet voice and totally remembers his past. Being the king's official protector, he lived in Alcarl, a living country full of green fields. One day an elf from another nation delivered a message to the emperor, telling him to serve the Lysia Empire and destroy the Holy Empire of Delamus, and the king clearly refused. The messenger tells the king that if he refuses, his kingdom will be taken over by darkness, and so it was, and some time later the Empire of Alcarl was practically dead and without inhabitants. The emperor had died, leaving only his wife, who left in Gerard's care his only daughter, Connie, after which the empress suddenly died. The knight left the kingdom with the little girl, and as they walked for a long time, he noticed that the girl was already dead in his arms. Remembering this scene, he becomes enraged and his loyalty is fortified, asking the young man if he will help him in his revenge against those who brought misery to his people. Kelvin takes distance, and at that moment Clotho releases a super beam in the direction of the knight, ending the intense battle. The next day, the adventurers of the guild are happy because Cashel and his group have been arrested because of the crimes they had already committed with other people, and everyone is in awe of the young wizard who has brought along part of the Ghost Rider's armor, proving to everyone that he has defeated him. The receptionist informs him that because that mission is of a higher level, the young man has earned a special raise in his rank. And now he continues his adventure with his allies, Melfina of unknown level, Clotho of level 15, and Gerard, the Black Knight of level 53. Going up the stairs of the guild, the young man comes across Leo, the master of the Parth Adventurers Guild. The old man asks if he by any chance came from another world. Kelvin is startled by the question and immediately uses his eye power and comes across the status of the host, who could also use the same technique. In a room, the two begin to talk and the young man is asked directly by the leader if he is a summoner. Apprehensive of being discovered, he does not know what to say, but the voices of his servants that resonate within him encourage him not to hide this for too long, and in this period he must make friends with strong people to help him on his journey. Hearing this, he confirms that he is a summoner, and the old man says that he does not want to be an enemy but wishes to maintain a cooperative relationship with the adventurer. After all, he has met more people who have come from another world. The young man is amazed to learn that more inhabitants of his old world have ended up reincarnated in those lands. Being called the great heroes of the Holy Empire of Daramus, Melfina remembers having them transferred to this place. The old man goes on to explain that the priestess of Daramus heard the prophecy of the gods and summoned the great heroes, because the rebirth of the demon lord was near. He goes on to say that the monsters on the continent are getting stronger and stronger due to the return of their lord, and for this reason he needed the help of the summoner to contain these creatures, while the heroes would take care of the leader. The young man does not accept the proposal right away, but upon learning of the benefits he would have, he becomes enthusiastic, including having free access to choose any mission, going to rank B, and having his secret kept. Thus, they make the deal. At the inn, the protagonist is congratulated by Claire for his progress, the owner of the place, who is immensely happy for his new achievement. After all, it wasn't just anyone who could rise in rank so quickly. She prepares a lovely meal for the young man, who goes to rest in his quarters. In his room he asks Melfina about the heroes she sent to this world. The goddess explains that the priestess of Daramus performed an invocation ritual, so she found some young monks and girls who seemed smart enough to be reincarnated, stating that by now they should be at a relatively high level to battle the Demon King. His servant tells him that it is better not to participate in this fight. The young man agrees and quickly asks his slime to give him the reward he had saved. When asked by Gerard if he intended to buy something, the young man says yes, and before leaving he asks Claire to make food for one more person. Walking down the street, Kelvin reveals to his servants that he will buy an elf and intends to make her join the group, so that he can train her and she will take over as the team's support, since she only attacks with abilities that her master orders. When he arrives in the alley, a man comes out of the place with his head on fire, and the young man discovers that the half-elf in question carried a curse where everything she touched would catch fire. Kelvin asks Melfina if they could break that curse. The goddess replies that apparently it was a fire dragon king's curse, and a holy blessing spell of white magic, rank A, could end it. The young man, on hearing this, simply leaves. Later he returns, and even with the seller's warnings, the adventurer buys the cursed elf. She follows him and thanks him for her freedom, then reveals that her name is Ephil. She has been a forced labor servant since the moment she was born and has never met her parents. She also does not know why she is cursed. Kelvin places his hand on her head, and at that moment a bright light is conjured. Breaking the curse once and for all, Ephil is extremely grateful, crying on her knees before her master Kelvin. The summoner tells Melfina that the holy magic worked. After all, he ended up spending all his skill points to acquire it. The goddess agrees that her master will stay with the elf until such time as he can summon her. At the end of that day, the two of them return to the inn. Ephil receives all the necessary care. Now wearing good clothes and with a smile on her face, she enjoys a happy dinner next to her master. Later, he introduces all the members of the team to his newest ally. The adventurer gives her some of his skills, doubling her growth rate and doubling her skill points. In the end, everything went well, except for Kelvin, who couldn't sleep properly in his room due to the elf's presence. Who will be the next servants to be recruited by Kelvin? What adventures await this group of so many different abilities? So, what did you think of this anime? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like it and subscribe for more anime recaps. See you next time.